I'm kind of excited about this one. This is a really beautiful kapitel. If we can get through this whole thing, it's not long, and if we can get through the whole thing today, then next week in Mitzvah we can get to Kuf Beis, which will be very, very appropriate because that's the kapitel of Esther.
Wow.
This is so it's a shaka.
Thank you.
But this one is also very interesting. And again, with the Kan Tzippor's unique approach, Kuf Aleph, 21. One thing I wanted to say about from last week was we mentioned that the words Melech Yaneinu B'Yom Kareinu, right? So the last few words Yaneinu B'Yom Kareinu, the Rashi Tevis is Yud Beis Kuf, which is the gematria of Havaya Elokim. Two names of Hashem, Havaya Elokim. You know, say like Hashem Hu Elokim, that's Havaya Elokim. So those two put together are very powerful because Havaya is pretty much all-encompassing, but it's more on the side of Racham, of compassion, and Elokim is more din. So when you put those two together, and you put the din under the Racham, that's like the biggest yichud that you can get. But I just wanted to mention that it also is a Rashi Tevis of Yichud, Brocha, Kedusha. Those three things: Yichud, Brocha, and Kedusha. And those are three extremely important things, which are all expressing levels of that they're striving to achieve. Yichud being, like we say, Krishna, it's putting everything together into one. Then Brocha is bringing down the Shefa, the energy, the life force, and everything into the world. And Kedusha is godliness. It's trying to elevate the whole world to a level of Kedusha, which is associated with the Mikdash. And that's those three things are extremely important concepts. So that pasuk is said all over the place and all the time. We say it 3 times each time. Also, that it's a very, very often repeated pasuk. So it kind of has something to do with what we're talking about today, because his whole approach to this particular kapitel is that it's talking about the concept of yichud and zivig, which of course we're talking about almost all of them, but how to come to this level of putting upon him. But each time he takes like a different angle, a different approach. And as we've said before, the whole concept of yichud, even though here he's talking about a lot about the moshel of the chassan and kala, the melech and the malka, the chassan and the kala. So that and male, female, that kind of thing. But as we say, that same relationship applies to all kinds of situations where there's a mashpia and a kabel, somebody giving and somebody receiving. So that's a relationship between Hashem and Klali. So it applies on all these levels. So I also think it's very relevant, specifically the idea of a teacher and a student, or a rebbe and a talmud, or that kind of thing. So we can apply it to those things as well. And he also, another thing, just as an introduction, he also refers to the concept of tikkun, which is the Arizal has a particular approach to the concept of this idea of tikkun. That there's a in the Chumash it talks about this idea of these 7 in the Chumash. The Chumash. Try to adjust my accent. The Chumash talks about the 7 kings of Edom, and then there was an 8th one. Right? So he says about the 7 kings that they died. 7 chiefs or 7 kings? Dukes, Malachim, whatever you want to call them. They usually call them Malachim. So anyway, but they're called Aluf. So they're for some reason they call them Malachim. They refer to them as the 7 Malachim. So that's the 7 Malachim, and then the 8th one is called the Melech Hadar, and that's the idea of tikkun. So you have to go through the 7 before you get to the 8th one. The Ramak rather has a different take on that whole thing, but he's talking about the way he talks about it is in the context of what's called Shviras HaKelim, which is the idea that Hashem says that remember that Hashem created worlds and destroyed them before coming to this world. There's a lot. I can't go into this in depth because it's just a tremendously large thing, and I don't have really such a command of the Arizal's approach because I haven't really seen it inside. I've just read other things about his approach. But anyway, he's talking about this thing that you have to go through those 7 levels, and they have to be destroyed. They were destroyed by the Yeshua's Tehillim, was that they just got kind of overwhelmed by the presence of Hashem or whatever. And there's this idea of each one wanted to chap too much for themselves. They wanted to take it all for themselves, and they collapsed because they couldn't handle it. And so until they got to the 8th level, and then that was the beginning of the tikkun of being able to come up with a world that could handle this this presence of Hashem. So one second to the David, which we explained before. Hashem be'ozcha yismach melech v'bish'oscha ma yugel ba'oid. So again, we've talked before about the concept that there are several different types of Tehillim. Sometimes, a lot of the Tehillim we've had so far have been David Melech calling out to Hashem. Hashem, save me from the enemies and this kind of thing. And then some of them, like Kapitel 8, some of the ones we've seen are more like kind of, even the first one, are more of a declaration of the situation, to teach us about how to look at the world, how to properly perceive the world. And they're more informational than supplicational, let's say. So here, and some of them are pretty historical, they just go through a whole series of events, anyway, so, yeah?
Sorry, you said
Ein Test. 79. Okay. So this one is more of an informational type of. He's kind of, in the page he talks about that there's like a badchen in front of the king, and he's talking the praises of the king. So he's explaining what's going on. And
Badchen is a checker?
Badchen is
supervisor.
No, Badchen is entertainer kind of. So by Chasna you have, this by Chassidish Chasnas they have.
Bedicha.
Yeah, it's a
joker.
But he's not just a joker. I mean, by Chassidish Chasnas can be a very serious thing. The mitzvah tanz is a very serious thing. But he does usually say something, mixing the rule with a comedy. But anyways, he's more of a performer, a person who can make rhymes and spontaneously and that kind of thing. So here, what he's doing is he's talking in praise of the king. Okay, so Hashem. So he's talking about Hashem, but Ozcha Yismach Melech. So in your strength, the king will be happy. So he's talking about the king. Okay, so the Ozcha, he says here, is talking about the Shem Ma, HaChudash. Ma is the whole presentation about Ma. Ma is besides being Nachnu Ma, when Moshe Rabbeinu said, what are we? Who are we? What are we? They're complaining about they didn't have food and he wanted to send them on. And that's why Mon is actually also called after Ma. They didn't know what it was. They asking Ma what it is. So it turns out that Ma, besides being the gematria of Adam, man, it's also the gematria of the Shem Havaya with what's called Milui Alfin. When you spell out each of the letters, and there's several ways of doing it. You can either do like the letter Hey, for example, can be spelled Hey Aleph or Hey Hey or Hey Yud. So depending on which of those spellings you take for the letter, you can come up with different gematrias, and they have 4 different ways of spelling out the middle. It's the letter with spelling out each letter, and the one that is, and one of them is when you add when you spell each of the letters with an aleph, it comes out to be mem hey also with ma. Okay, so it's a very important thing. So he says that. So the Arizal comes up with this. The ma hachudash is the beginning of the tikkun. That's when that became revealed, that specific spelling of the Shem Havaya, then that's when the tikkun started. So this is referring to the beginning of the tikkun. So and that's what he's saying Hamachadesh b'chol yom tumi Masei Bereishis, that Hashem is continually renewing the world. That started with this Shem Mahachodesh. It's referring to this idea of a renewal of the world. That's the idea of this tikkun. That's related to the Shem Ma, and which is referring again to this 8th king Hadar. and his wife Mehetavel. It refers to the queen's name in the Chumash. It talks about the name of his name was Hadar, and his wife's name was Mehetavel. And with that, he was taken to the other 7 kings of Edom. And Oscha, the word Oscha is in Gematria Mehetavel. So these are direct. That's how it's Maramis to this. So it's referring to this whole.
That's a very important chapter that Hashem devotes 40 psukim listing all the descendants of Esau,
Right.
including their concubines.
Right. So this is why he's saying this is why
it's
it's such an
Vayishlach.
emphasis.
What parsha? Vayishlach.
On the in addition to the kabbalistic level and the deeper kings and worlds, etc., Rab Miller says on the most simplest level, what it shows is that Hashem still had a certain felicity and interest in the descendants of Esau. He was concerned for them in a sense, even though they were mostly showing that he wanted them to come back if they could. He still showed an interest.
Well, we know that Esau had a tremendous potential.
Esau was supposed to marry Dinah, and he would have been the 4th avot, the 4th father. But Yaakov did not. I don't know if I'm interjecting. I'm sorry. But Yaakov apparently hid Dinah away.
Right.
Leah and Yaakov hid her away and deprived Yaakov of Esau of doing tshuva, and hence we have this whole melodrama.
There's a lot of discussion of Esau's potential, what he could have been, and what he should have been. They say that Esau was, in a sense, bigger than Yaakov in a certain way in terms of his potential. But what Yitzchak had in mind, obviously, was that he should be, that if they worked together, and Esau was able to conquer the Gashmis, and Yaakov was also the Ruchnis, then together they would be able to, that would really be a tikkun.
Rab Kessin of New Jersey, he maintains that Donald Trump is Gilgul, Sheba Esau, the good of Esau, and maybe a Gilgul of Antoninus, says Rab Kessin, and it could redeem the whole thing, which is why Donald Trump is Gematria 424, Mashiach ben David.
Oh. And he has a Jewish granddaughter, Jewish daughter.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so what's the Yismach Melech? So Melech is the idea of Malchus, and Mehetavel is the idea of Atika Kedusha. It's a very, very high level. Right up on the top. So we're bringing together this idea of again, the very highest level with the lowest level, which is Malchus, and that brings simcha. That's the idea of Yismach Melech, so he's able to rejoice. Because the tikkun is going to come from Abba, which is this very, very high level of Chochmah, right, way up on the top. Okay, so if we share Oscha shel Ma, so the simcha, with this simcha, the tikkun is going to come through Chochmah, and which is referred to the Malchus. So that's basically what he's talking about. We're talking about now about in the very top, the Moichin, the intellect that is going to come down and is going to bring the Yeshua, and is going to bring this tikkun and everything else. Okay. Now, when there's also he brings down so the Rizal explains that the Rizal explains that that in order that there's a concept that the Shekhinah, the presence of Hashem, is on the level of Bria, which is lower. There are 4 levels, Tzivus, Bria, Tzivus. So it's important to know is just the relationship between them. So Bria is underneath the Tzivus. In order for Mashiach to come, this idea of ponim b'ponim, of really being face to face with Hashem, we have to get up to the level of that Tzivus. But the Shekhinah isn't there yet. It's still hanging in the level of Bria, which is one level below. So the question is, how does it get elevated to that level? So what this is talking about is that in order for an elevation to take place, where you've got somebody on a higher level trying to take somebody from a lower level, because he's being mashpia, he's giving to this level that's on the lower level, and trying to bring him up to his level. So this is really what it's talking about. How does that take place? So you can really compare that to any time any teacher that's trying to communicate with a student has to, in a sense, to have a dialogue with him, to have a relationship with him, that we can actually influence him and give over information that the student is going to be able to absorb. he has to descend to his level first. He has to kind of bring himself down a little bit. They talk a lot in Chassidus about the idea of Meshulam, that when you, and how does Hashem communicate to us? And the Chumash is full of stories. And these stories are really very allegorical, besides being historical to whatever extent. They're also allegorical. And the idea is to enclose very high concepts in a narrative that we can grasp as a narrative. So that's a way of he's coming down to a level. When a person is trying to explain a very abstract concept, he'll first try to give a motion. It's a parable, an analogy, a metaphor, whatever it is. All these figurative ways of putting it in more concrete terms that a person should be able to absorb it, and then he can raise that person up to his level. Because what we're coming on here is that this concept of yichud and zivug and everything, which is the combining of two things and into a new thing, is very much tied up with the concept of the intellect. In other words, when a person, one of the highest, if not the highest, tainug, the joy and pleasure that a person can come to is understanding a new thing, especially something he didn't understand before, and all of a sudden it opens up. When you say something opens up, or when you say it becomes clear to me, or all of a sudden it just hit me like this, you're talking about a level of inspiration, of being able to understand something that you didn't understand before. And that's a new thing. Now, how does that happen? It's an amazing thing. How does a person grasp something that he wasn't able to grasp before? And how does he put together two things that out of nowhere seemingly, that all of a sudden connects? All of a sudden you see, this connects to that, and all of a sudden, now the aha moment, the eureka, I found it. Well, that's tiny. That is a wonderful feeling. And they talk about people with these near-death experiences. Some of them talk about how they had this like a brain dump, that there was like this communication going on from this whatever higher entity that they were in communication with. And they just made them, all of a sudden, everything made sense. Everything, there were things that they never understood before, they were able to understand. But when they come back down out of it, they don't just remember what they understood, but they remember the experience of having had that clarity. And that's a very big, that's really part of the whole concept here. We talk about that the higher levels of intellect went down to be able to communicate, and then this zivig happened on a lower level, and then it was able to be brought up to a higher level after that. So before, in the last couple we were talking about that in terms of gvura. We had to go into a level of gvura and fighting the enemy and this kind of thing, which is also an experience of time when you vanquish your enemies. But that's also on a lower level. But we needed that as a prerequisite and as a preparation, a preface to be able to come up to the higher level that we want to be at eventually. So this is really what all this is talking about. We're trying to get from the lower level to the higher level. So there's also this concept of an attraction that when we talk about chosn and kala, we're talking about that there is an attraction, and we have to understand that between Klal Yisrael and Hashem, there's an attraction there. Hashem has an attraction to us, and we have an attraction to Hashem. But that's why it's compared to our chosn and kala, because it's going on that level. There's a certain element of tainug. There's a desire. Hashem desires to come close to us. He desires to have a dwelling place in the world, and we have a desire to come closer to Him. So it's this mutual desire. Now, how do you get that going? How do you arouse that sense of desire? So there's something that we call kishutim. Kishutim is like ornaments. So just like it's all a metaphor. Just like the chusn gives ornaments, gives jewelry or whatever to the kala when they get engaged or whatever, he sends jewelry to the kala, and also the kala. There's a concept that the kala also sends gifts to the chosn. So there's this mutual giving of gifts, and then when let's say the kala adorns herself with the jewelry that the chosn gave her, and the chosn sees her wearing his jewelry that he gave her, it gives him it arouses this feeling of love and desire for the kala, because the very fact that she received it from him, and she, showed that, some appreciation for that, and then he sees her in that thing that he already has, he already considers that to be something chashuv, something important. So then that gives him, a good feeling. And in the same respect, if she gives him something, then she sees him wearing that, so it's awesome because it's interaction. As opposed to if he just bought the stuff himself and put it on, or she bought the things herself and put it on, it wouldn't have